Welcome to our travel event here hosted by Shuttle. And I've got a couple of our partners joining me in this session who are going to be talking about the fact that travel is alive again and we are all able to travel as holiday makers, consumers. But what does it mean for those different players in the industry? And I've got Mark Jackson from Mr Zen and RezKit, who'll introduce himself in a moment. But they're a software vendor in the travel and hospitality space. And then I've also got Harry White over at Ecommpay, and they have great experience processing payments across cards and alternative payment methods in the travel space as well. Great. Hi, gents. Thanks for joining me.
All right, you're welcome.
Love to just let you introduce yourselves, do a much better job than I could possibly do. So Mark, let's just start with you, if that's okay.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark from Mr Zen and RezKit. We do a few things. As Mr Zen, we build websites in the travel industry, websites and booking systems for our clients in the travel industry, typically for sort of specialist and niche operators, a lot of them not so niche anymore, lots of adventure tour operators, lots of group trip operators, everything from high-end art tours to overland trucks and trekking holidays are our typical clients. And they're businesses that used to be quite niche, but actually you're now very, very big businesses, and it's a very big industry. As RezKit is a new reservation system that we've been building and working on, and it's really come out of our frustrations through our careers and our work at Mr Zen from having to deal with a lot of the old technology and the old reservation systems that exist in the travel industry. We obviously thought there has to be a better way. Let's make a reservation system that fully embodies all the concepts of SaaS and of all the modern technical approaches. So RezKit really is a few things. It's a headless product management system for group tours and for travel products. It analyzes the management of travel products from CMSs. Our clients typically, every 5 years or so, they have to refresh their websites, rebuild them, which often means rebuilding a new back end, rebuilding all the data structures and the UI to manage their travel product. But with an externalized travel product database, they don't have to worry about that side. They can just rebuild a new front end and move on. And then the sales and reservation side of RezKit is a sort of white label booking process for taking bookings on group tours, for managing customer accounts and for managing those bookings. But like I said, built looking outwards, built happy to connect to other systems and to work well with other systems, which a lot of travel technology traditionally hasn't done.
My name's Harry. I've been with Ecommpay for 4 and a bit years now, working exclusively on the travel sector. We sell the acquiring and gateway services that we own, it's all our own technology. We've been trying to provide an alternative to the established players, a chronically underserved industry in our belief in their payments services. Obviously, the pandemic was a massive challenge for lots of different reasons, but we were able to help our merchants navigate through that, open websites in domestic regions where people were still flying internally to generate some revenue, which kept some of these guys afloat. But it also means we understand the travel industry to a greater level, I think, than any other acquirer out there. And given that our platform is exceptionally new, we rebuilt the gateway 4 or 5 years ago from scratch. We're quite experienced in understanding their needs and making sure that we can offer a bespoke solution to the travel companies that we serve. And it's a great industry, fun industry, and we're very proud to be a part of it.
Great. Thanks, both. Let's kick off with what's going on. It's been a funny old few years. We had the pandemic, and now apparently we're moving into what some might call a recession, especially in the UK. What's just the general vibe out there in the travel world?
It's been a great start to the year for us, really, and for a lot of our clients. January traditionally is a strong month in the travel industry. Most of our clients have seen a January as good as their pre-pandemic Januaries, which is absolutely fantastic. Last year, while people were able to travel and our clients found that they were getting almost their pre-pandemic booking levels back, they then had issues operating because of airlines, regulations and restrictions in some countries and so on. So they then had to cancel a big percentage of the bookings that they'd taken. But that has all passed. Everyone in the industry is feeling a lot more positive. Every one of our clients that I've spoken to this year have had a good January and has seen significant growth over the last year. And now that they've had an okay year last year and they're seeing some growth this year, our clients are starting to invest again and look at enhancing and improving their technology.
Just to echo that, January is always a big month for the travel industry. People having those post-Christmas blues, looking to book their summer trips. And yeah, the merchants that we serve, we saw an explosion of their revenue last year. But as Mark says, there are lots of challenges there, particularly around labour shortages. I think that's probably the biggest one at the moment, getting enough people to work in the hotels and the trips and the tours and all the other little stuff that you wouldn't expect that you do need within the travel industry in terms of staffing. But it's a really positive start, and some of the merchants that we're working with are exceeding their 2019 revenue targets. And it looks like, the old phrase now is travel is back, but it certainly is. And we were really excited by that. It's obviously great to see some of our merchants bouncing back.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason we pulled this event together. We at Shuttle are experiencing and working with an increasing number of businesses and merchants in the travel space. So there's a lot of movement happening. Guys, I wonder if I can just jump into that post-pandemic world that we're living in now and hear from both your kind of experience, but also some of the stories that you might have heard. What are the lessons that people have learned now post-pandemic? What's going to help them recession-proof or bulletproof their businesses going forward? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Harry, I'll start with you if you like.
Yeah, sure. I think the biggest thing is chargeback management. I think a lot of these merchants that we work with didn't really know the best ways to deal with chargebacks before the pandemic, and then obviously got hit quite badly. Now they are very well versed, and their terms and conditions are a lot tighter to prevent losses and any potential chargebacks coming through. But moreover, I think it's just the understanding that are just wanting to go on these trips and have some clarity, getting back to you pretty quickly, straight line communication, responding to comments and building chatbots and stuff like that on the website, which has proven to be very useful for some of our merchants. It's all those little things I think they've just tightened up. But I think it's also about having the right technologies there, the right payment methods, and things like that. I think it's definitely been a learning for them. And we're starting to see those guys ask us more about how to better future-proof themselves. Obviously, a recession is a recession. There are some impacts you're never going to avoid, but it's how do you still maintain the same income, which customers you target, that sort of stuff that we're able to help them with, particularly with regards to acceptances and things like that. But chargeback management is probably the biggest learning, I'd say. And our merchants are now in a pretty strong position should, fingers crossed, anything like that ever happen again.
And you mentioned to Mark and I before actually we started the formal part of the call about some of the other things that merchants are doing. Perhaps instead of having to have a hold with the payments company that they're working with, they can actually offset that challenge to an insurer. Yeah, exactly. Insurance is supposedly bulletproof, but it's a lot better than having a massive £500,000 off your cash flow. We know that as a payments company, we know the challenges, we know the risks. We've seen merchants fail, and it obviously impacts us and impacts other providers, and that creates regulatory challenges on the back of it. But no payment provider wants to take that sort of money off a merchant. We only want to see them succeed. So looking at more dynamic packaging to insure themselves and get them to a place where the risk is minimal, I think it's definitely something that the travel guys are understanding. And as long as you have that honest conversation with them, they get it. They understand it. And that's the really positive side. They understand where we're at, where the challenges are. Yeah, great. Thank you. Mark, you may have seen some ebbs and flows recently, and I know a lot of businesses in travel are looking to now think strategically about the future, the adoption of new technology and how they can do better and be more efficient. What are some of the things that you've been coming across and the stories that you've heard?
I think in terms of what companies have learned, I think the travel industry it suffers shocks quite regularly. It's quite susceptible to shocks. Things like usually geographical or events and so on. Things like Turkey and so on, that's obviously going to have an impact, very sadly. Obviously, the travel industry has learned how resilient it can be with the biggest shock it has experienced in my over 20 odd years in the travel industry with the pandemic. But they're also realizing even more the importance of technology in helping that flexibility, having the tools to help them. Some of our clients change their products in order to suit the conditions of the pandemic, and they've got to have the systems and the tools to help them do that. Other clients have had to change payment gateways because of the pandemic, because there are payment gateways that didn't work with travel for a while. But all of our clients have been coming to us and came to us in the pandemic and said, how can you help us with this? How can technology or how can the system help us adapt? We need to change our product. We need to change our pricing strategy. We need to reprice perhaps, or we need to focus on a new market. So I think with reduced numbers of staff and so on, a lot of clients have been more reliant on their technology and have been forced to look at their technology more closely. I think it's actually on a positive that it's given people time to look at their technology and see some of the other stuff that's out there, because there's always these huge projects that people want to do to improve their technology that they can never ever get to when the day job's ongoing. But yeah, the pandemic has given some of our clients time to focus on that.
What are some of the things that they've been asking for? Not necessarily specifically, but it sounds like they've been asking for some more agility and more efficiencies. Are you able to talk to some of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, I guess, going specifically, but yeah, it is. As I say, it's things like changing their product. So they might have to do big updates across all of their product. It might be updates to pricing, how they manage their pricing. They might need more access to data to do that so that they can report on cost and margin and pricing and so on more effectively. But it's, again, travel companies, I think, have become more aware of their pricing. And I think actually in a lot of our kind of clients, there's a move. Sometimes when there's a crisis, there's a move to discount and to offer lower prices to get every bit of business. But now a lot of our clients are doing their ground with their prices and making sure they do cover their costs. Often using their systems to better access their data is quite a key one.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if you can follow up on that, Harry, like in terms of some of the kind of almost reporting and abilities that you're providing those merchants in terms of like actually what's going on with payments. I don't know if you've seen any kind of insights that you've been able to provide from that point of view.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult sometimes because some of the costs that are incurred by the schemes are the costs. There isn't much you can really do about that. But I think certainly within the payment method sphere where they're looking to target new markets and perhaps get a better rate for doing so, payment methods is definitely a shortcut for that. Certainly, the merchants have become more aware of what the costs actually are, and they're very much conscious of the fact that some of these methods are going to cost them more. Amex is the obvious example of that, where they're charged well over 2.5% per transaction. That's before it's even come through anyone else. And so I think it's caused some of these merchants to reevaluate. So I recently did a bit of analysis for a merchant who asked, would I be able to save money giving access more to corporate cards rather than Amex versus having Amex, and what the take up is. And so we did a bit of take analysis across our merchant portfolio, how many corporate cards actually come across merchants of a similar size and type, and it just didn't seem like the right decision for them. So we were able to consult on that better. And I think that's what we try to position ourselves as payment consultants. These holiday companies, they're focused on delivering the best holiday experience for their customers. They're not focused on card efficiency. That's our job. And if we can provide that for the merchants, then we've fulfilled our role. So we're always looking for that sort of stuff. And yeah, great. It's good to see that the customers and the merchants are more aware of that stuff now.
It's good. Yeah, I think it has. I'm sure that businesses work together and they engage, but I think there's been more engagement and more cooperation, which has been great. Mark, I don't know if you can tell us or summarize a little bit about the current state of play in terms of tech and travel right now, because it seems, just through my lens, there's a lot going on, especially in the travel tech world. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think it is a great and interesting time. There's a lot of frustrations out there, and I think there's still a lot of old system. Travel reservation systems are traditionally big, complicated. There's a lot of admin that goes on behind the scenes once a travel company gets a booking on a group tour or a package or something like that. Huge amounts of admin and operational work that goes on, and yeah, there's lots of big, complicated, old reservation systems that try to manage that are a bit stuck in the past. Now, that's great for us because that gives us a big opportunity to do things differently. And of course, software development has matured over the past 5 to 10 years ago. Things have really come along in terms of how software development is done, in terms of how user interfaces are created and the kind of apps and things that have been created. And the reservation system industry is making use of that mature software development, those mature software development technologies and frameworks and approaches, but not across the whole of the travel reservation system industry. There are lots of great systems out there that fully embrace SaaS, but they're still a minority. And it's great for us. There's lots of old school systems. We're embracing all the concepts of SaaS. We want customers to be able to onboard easily. We want them to be able to sign up to demos and log in, use the system without having to think too much about it. Whereas traditionally, if you were trying to buy a reservation system, if you're a big travel company, it would take months and months of meetings and demos and reviews and so on. And you'd end up making a decision and you still wouldn't be any sure if you were making the right decision. And technology shouldn't be that way anymore. Travel systems need to be, you get a new app on your phone, you sign up to a new bank, you need to be able to log in and use it. And travel reservation systems should be just as usable as that these days. And they are starting to become so. And that's really exciting for us. That's the space we're trying to get into. So yeah, it's great to see that happening because the travel industry's been screaming out for it for years, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? We're all consumers. We are versed and experienced now in that retail consumer experience, which is great. On my mobile, I can buy whatever I want quite quickly and go through that process of, even if it's a slightly more complicated process, but actually it all can be done conveniently on my phone. And yet when you try and book something with travel, it can be quite the opposite to our current expectations. And you just forget, wow, this wasn't that long ago we were here.
Yeah, a lot of the booking processes have caught up, but it's the behind the scenes systems that the teams in the travel companies use that are still catching up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I also wonder whether some of the merchants they have a lot of Moto transactions, which obviously don't naturally feed into a lot of the reservation systems that are out there. And I think that process of payment is still really popular for lots of different reasons. So it's a challenge for sure.
And that's, so you're talking about someone making a phone call to make a booking. Yeah. It could be a corporate booking, it could be a consumer booking, but then that process is handled over the phone and ultimately the payment details are taken over the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. I'm going to ask you guys about trends in a minute. What kinds of trends are you seeing both in your different worlds in tech and payments? But something that I've noticed in the last, I don't know, year and a half is this change that Google have made, where effectively there's a lot more visibility now to a direct hotel or travel experience website. There aren't so many aggregators in the way necessarily when it comes to those Google search results. So I don't know if you've got a comment about that, but tell us what kind of other trends are you seeing and what other experiences have been really beneficial for the end?
I can talk a little bit about it. I think that Google's definitely a place where I go to first when I'm looking for flights and rough costs. But I think still for the package holiday side of the industry and for families that are looking to book an all-in-one experience, I think the OTA aggregator approach is always going to be useful. Just purely out of ease. We know human nature is built out of ease. If it's easy to do something, we tend to do it. So I think that Google offers an interesting research tool. I'm not sure whether the conversions are necessarily there. The other thing as well is that for an OTA, the referral fees for some of these, Google being one of them, are incredibly high. I know for a fact that a couple of them will charge £1.80 for every passed over lead, and £1.80 can be someone's margin on a flight. So it's those sorts of things that that the OTAs need to think about, so a lot of direct marketing is still going to be there. In terms of general trends, I think the most interesting one to look for is the growth of buy now, pay later. I mean, we saw how it exploded in retail, and we think that the first merchant Klarna had in the UK anyway was 2014, and now they're obviously huge. Less than 10 years later, I know they've had the challenges, but they're still a massive company. And I think potentially the same thing could happen within travel, mainly because a lot of them offer a cost model where the customer pays for the actual repayment system, not the merchant gets their money early. The payments company, it doesn't have any of the risk, because if the customer doesn't pay, it's down to the buy now, pay later schemes to go get the money. And I think that maybe with some additional lessons learned from the retail side, it could really explode within travel. And so I think that's definitely something to watch over the next year or two. We've partnered with one of those schemes and their growth is massive. So yeah, look, I've got merchants that want to use it. So it's definitely something I would say is the number one trend at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We've all been paying for our holiday off in chunks anyway.
Exactly.
So what's the difference? I don't know, except
the difference is you're not paying a percentage of buy now, pay later. You're paying a fixed fee of, let's say you've got £1,000 on a holiday, you might pay 50 quid to pay that off over a 10-month period, whereas with your credit card, you're paying 21%, which is obviously a lot more. So those sorts of things, I think, will definitely open the door.
And the travel merchant potentially gets the money straight away.
Exactly. Straight away.
Interesting. Mark.
Yes, that is interesting. I think we are seeing more of that. I think a lot of our clients, traditionally, there was a long lead time from booking to travel, but they're seeing that reduce. Even pre-pandemic, they're seeing that reduce because people want to book and go away in a few months' time. And I think the old long lead times used to give people time to get, because they never had to pay their balance until shortly before travel. That used to give them time to stash that away and then pay it off. But with shorter lead times, I think we'll see that increase in use of those services. I think, subscription payments as well is becoming more and more popular. We've got more and more clients asking about those kind of features. Again, traditionally, we talked about technology maturing, but the payment industry has matured a lot as well. And there's some fantastic payment services out there and much more accessible payment services to small businesses that are pushing forward what tour operators will offer, because they're offering things like subscriptions and monthly payments and so on. So there's a lot more sort of utilization and interest in those kind of services from tour operators.
What is the subscription in your world? What does that mean?
So paying for your holiday monthly, basically. So rather than a gym subscription where you're a member for a year, you're buying your holiday, and then travel companies are using those subscription services to pay that £2,000 or whatever it is for that holiday. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. I just give a shout out to anyone who's listening in, a part of this session. If you've got any questions, just drop them into the chat and I'll ask the guys, and we'll give it our best shot and discussing it at the very least and see if we can answer it. But if you've got a question, drop it into the chat and love to speak to that. I was going to just talk a little bit more about the general space, but I don't know if either of you guys want to talk about particular trends that are happening any further at all, or we can move on.
I think the big one for us is, in terms of industry activity rather than consumer activity, is more investment in technology and people realizing that there is better technology out there for them. And clients now realizing that they've done nothing with their technology for 3 years, but it's time to give it a boost again. Yeah, it's a big one for us.
We've experienced that as well when we're coming up, when the platform is so old that our system is too new to integrate with it, or lots of other bits and pieces. But the general trends I've seen, like I said, it's a mixture of the old and the new. The sort of what I mentioned before about calling up and booking seems like such an antiquated process, but it's still very popular, particularly if when we have a few high-end merchants that target people that have a lot of money and want to go on these luxury trips to all far-flung destinations. If they're dropping 20, 30 grand on a holiday, they probably want to do it over the phone because they feel more secure. Even under card schemes and all of the stuff that we see, it's probably the most unsecure form of payment. So that still being prevalent is really interesting when you combine it with stuff like the buy now, pay laters, open banking, things like that. I think open banking's got a bit way to go before it becomes a real thing within travel. I think purely because of the consumer protection and people like the air miles on their credit cards and all the rest of it. But it is interesting to watch it grow. But I think just that combination of the very new and the very old still being really prevalent, I think is a really interesting trend and kind of quite unique for this industry and sets it apart from people like retailers and e-tailers and so forth.
Cool. Yeah, interesting. And Mark, I suppose I'll direct my question or idea towards you and see what you think. But I suppose technology kind of abstracts us and removes us away from that human engagement. What are you seeing and what are people asking for to effectively have more efficient conversations and potentially actually increase the conversion or likelihood of a booking, and whatever that booking might be? Is it chatbots? Are people wanting chat GPT on everything, or what are people asking for? What are you doing in terms of bridging that gap?
Yeah, we haven't had anyone ask for, in our niche, for chatbots or AI related chat as of yet. I'm sure the time will come, but our clients, I think Harry said that they're high value travel products. Often they want to speak to someone before dropping that 10, 20 grand for a family trip to Sri Lanka or wherever it might be. Our clients want to allow customers freedom to choose how they want to communicate, but they do want to be able to serve them very well online. So they want to be able to have functionality for customers to make balance payments, to be able to ask questions online and so on. But they still want to serve those that want to pick up the phone. And again, we've got lots of adventure travel clients and people love to talk about that stuff, and they get more of a feel for the brand they're booking with. People like talking about their holidays. It helps build their trust in the tour operator that they're booking with. I think online chat is popular for that. Telephone is still popular for that. We've got some clients that are doing Zoom meetings and Meet and using that to talk to their clients. But they're just trying to use as many ways as possible to communicate to allow customers to do them.
Yeah, interesting. We've been looking at some of those alternative channels to deliver or potentially work with other partners delivering payments, convenience into those channels. So what would it mean to be able to take a payment in chat? Maybe, as you mentioned, in Zoom, or even video shopping for travel, like concierge, show me around the room.
Yes, we in fact built a tool to do that several years ago, and it never came to anything. But
you were too early. You were too early.
I think we were too early. But online chat, you could drop travel product in, you could build a basket whilst talking, and then you could take payment within that online chat space. But it might be coming back to the travel industry soon. But it's mothballed at the moment.
We'll see. We'll see. Okay, this is my final question to you guys, and then we'll finish up. And we don't have any other external questions at the moment, but what would the one piece of advice that both of you individually would give to those companies working in the travel industry for 2023, 2024, post-pandemic, potential recession on the cards? What would you say?
I'm happy to say this one. It's something I coined recently, which is, and this is more about your technology, there's your partners, that sort of thing. I think it's not always the case that it's better the devil. And I think that what I mean by that is there are a lot of very established players in there that have become slow and stupid over a long time of servicing clients for decades. People, travel merchants that just love building holidays for their customers, picking the packages that made sense 20, 30 years ago don't necessarily make sense now. And I think having that mindset of constantly reviewing those services means that those services are only going to get, and I think that there is competition out there. There are competitors that can provide a better service than what we currently have. I think for us, the pandemic opened the door a little bit as payment providers stepped away and we were stepping in. But I think we've proved that we can deliver on a large scale for those guys and show that alternatives can be good, and the big established players may not always be able to react as quickly. So I think that look around, shop around, make sure you're getting the best deal, because the industry deserves it and it's always going to be there. We're always going to want to travel. 100 years time, when they're doing trips to the moon, there'll be some OTA that needs a better provider. So,
all right,
it's going to happen. So,
I won't be putting my trip to the moon on my Amex, but
maybe in a
Mark,
chatbot.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I think recession or not, I think the travel industry has proved its resilience. Lots of our clients, they suffer in a recession, but not too much. People still want to travel. People still want to get away. And I think our clients and the travel companies are realizing that the business has to continue in these times. They put too much on hold during the pandemic and they don't want to do that again. And so there's no need now to settle for poor or old technology. The systems are out there. The good technology is out there. You've got to move forward off of the old school travel reservation systems to take your business forward. Don't settle for old technology. Find the systems of your dreams. They do it, and move onwards and upwards with them.
Great. Well, there's some good synergy between your leaving passing remarks. So that's great. Mark Jackson, RezKit, Mr Zen, Harry White, Ecommpay, thank you so much for joining me today. And thanks to all our guests. We'll be sharing the video via our channels and love to hear and see you more in the future. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.